start of yet another week. Hello there, good afternoon and welcome to The Pulse. We are coming to you live from our studios here in Accra. We are on your digital terrestrial TV because we are free to air. You can also watch us live on DSTV channel 421, Go TV channel 144. This is JoyNews, independent, fearless and credible journalism. Coming up this afternoon on The Pulse, pressure mounts on Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to vacate his post as the latest polls by JoyNews reveal some Ghanaians have lost confidence in President Akufo-Addo's top appointee. Meanwhile, family and friends are jumping to the defense of Ken Ofori-Atta, saying the economic woes are not solely his fault. We'll bring you up shortly. Also, Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference throws its weight behind the National Cathedral project as a group argues investments already made in the multi-million-dollar project cannot be wasted.
Stage. National Cathedral has started already. And so since it has started already, I am not on the stage whether we need it or not. It has started. What I will say is, how are we going to do it?
It's more from the Catholic Bishops' Conference shortly. And fuel prices are up again by a slim margin, as JoyNews checks now show that diesel, for instance, is now being sold at 14 cedis per litre. We'll hear from experts on what's accounting for this. Plus, in a related development, organized labor is reacting to this as it renews agitations on the education front, with teacher unions laying out their tools on the issue of the cost of living. We'll bring you their reactions. This and more is coming your way here on The Pulse. I am Blessed Sogah. Of course, The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities Dignity Lu, affordable, safe sanitation. This afternoon, remember that we're streaming live on YouTube and all of our social media handles. It's at JoyNews on TV. Feel free to join us with the hashtag The Pulse. I am Blessed Sogah. Thanks for joining us. Well, this afternoon, there's more trouble for government. As workers in the Ghana's education sector have declared an indefinite strike over government's failure to pay up their cost of living allowance. The workers, actually made up of TEO, NAT, NAGRAT, and CCT, had demanded that the 20% of their basic salary be paid them. This was to help mitigate the impact of the rising cost of living on them. But after the June 30th deadline was exhausted, the workers have withdrawn their services, both in and outside of the classroom. So here's the General Secretary of NAC, Thomas Musa, announcing that decision a while ago.
These calls, unfortunately, have fallen on deaf ears. We wish to use this forum to express our displeasure over the insensitivity of the government regarding our demands. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our demand is influenced by the high level of inflation in the country, the incessant skyrocketing prices of fuel, goods and services have eroded the already woefully so-called salary increase granted us as expressed in the 4% and 7% respectively for the year 2021 and 2022. Inflation in the country is currently 27.6% and continues to escalate ad infinitum. Only God knows when this will end or abate. We are very much appalled at the inaptitude of the government relative to our call for cola. We have severally on different platforms and times made this call, which fell on deaf ears of government. For instance, several press conferences on this matter include the following. 1. A press conference address on 24 February 2022 by the unions in the pre-tertiary education sector. 2. A press conference expressed or addressed on the 20th of May 2022 by the Forum of Public Sector Unions. A passionate request contained in the 2022 May speech, and recently an official correspondence dated 24th June 2022 by the Secretary General of TUC addressed to the President of the Republic of Ghana have not had any acknowledgement from SAIL. The loud silence of the government on this matter is worrisome and leaves much to be desired of any government that cares about its workers. We wish to unambiguously express our grave concern of the excruciating pain of poverty that has been bestowed on the Ghanaian teacher and the educational workers, and leaves us with no option than where we are now. The members of the unions in the education can no longer bear the hardship. Even more so, we reject the inequality of salaries in the public services of this country. And I want to take this particular aspect again. Even more so, we reject the inequality of salaries in the public service of this country. Yeah. We have been compelled under the current circumstances to publicly communicate to Ghanaians on our intention to go on strike. Having gone past the June 30th, 2022 deadline, we gave government for the payment of cost living allowance. Consequently, we have decided to embark on a strike action effective today, Monday, July 4th, 2022, in the year of our Lord.
Well, the workers say their demand stand despite the impending IMF bailout being pursued by government. Mark Crunchy is General Secretary of TAIL.
This concern now, we have always talked about this salary disparity among public sector workers. How can it be that some section of the public sector workers got last year and this year more than 45%, and others are getting 4 and 7%? It is unheard of, and therefore we have called, and it is not today that we are calling for the review of the single spine pay structure. It has to be reviewed, and it has to be reviewed immediately. Now, the meeting on Friday, we saw it as an attempt to water down the request, because that is what government will always do. They will call for a meeting, and they will say, because we are engaging, you don't have a right to embark on a strike action. We saw far in advance this move, but we think that it is time, because we have waited for too long. Some of us started calling for this COLA way back in February 2022. Before May Day, we issued a statement, and all this while, no single invitation came forth. And that is why we think that we have gotten to our wits' end, and therefore we must make this declaration. As for the IMF and its ramifications and conditionalities, that is not what we are looking for. There is already a lot of any need for the country to go for IMF bailout.
These are the concerns of organized labor, particularly the teacher unions. Let's expand this conversation some more. Joining us now is Michael Ayurabora. He is the General Secretary of NAGRA, joining us, fortunately, just after that press conference. It appears that you are raising a number of issues, but let's start off on the economic front. You say that giving government's decision to go to the IMF, there's a likely implication for the demand you're making in the new allowances. And yet, in spite of all of these challenges, you say you will not back down. You will take your allowance regardless of the economic situation in which we find ourselves. Are you not being insensitive, if it's fair to describe you as such?
On the contrary, good afternoon to my viewers and listeners. On the contrary, the government is being insensitive to us. Why? The government pushed down our throats and to the embarrassment of leadership. In 2020, negotiation salary for 2021-2022, 4% and 7% respectively. That was quite embarrassing for leadership. But we had to take it. Yet nothing has changed in the powers that be in terms of how they manage this country and how the expenses have been like. In fact, they are responsible under Article 36 of our Constitution. Government is under the responsibility of ensuring that our economic well-being is good. So if inflation today is at 27.6 and beyond, what do you expect of the Ghanaian?
But you've heard the explanation from government, for instance, on the economic condition, the point about the external factors influencing this largely. You're not taking any of that? The Ukraine-Russian war, the COVID-19 explanations, that's not sufficient in terms of explaining the issues?
I don't think there was war in Ukraine and Russia in 2020. But we took the 4%. I don't think there was war in Ukraine in 2021. So why are we using that as an excuse? In fact, as the last time I checked, I'm not sure what, in terms of the kind of food that we eat, when you check the food inflation, wheat and all the things that come from Russia, it's not what we talk about. I still remember very well the agriculture minister telling us how banana, plantain was so cheap in this country. Maize and the rest, that's what we eat, rice. As far as I know, it doesn't come from Ukraine.
So all you want is your money?
What we want is that we know that the fuel price has increased. Okay? We know the foodstuff and goods and services have increased. And our salary has remained same.
Yeah, but the decision to just throw away the academic calendar is what's quite unfortunate, isn't it?
This is
you're deciding now that no teaching and learning basically will happen simply because you are demanding an allowance. And this is not, we need to be clear, not your salary.
Yes, but effectively it's our salary because we are asking for a cost of living allowance. We cannot live. So how do I go to teach? You know the fuel prices today. And the teacher has no free fuel anywhere to go to school. And you know how remote our teachers work. You know the place.
You don't have free fuel, but some say you live in bungalows for free, for instance.
Please, this is ridiculous. Your cameras can go into the schools and check how many teachers are currently resident in the schools. And check even the state and conditions of those bungalows. So embarrassing of a teacher.
For now, what will it take to bring you?
We want to build our own bungalows and live in.
Right.
And not live in the government bungalows. Because they are not fit for purpose. So if we're paid well, we would prefer to live in our own bungalows like all other workers in this country. And then go and do our work. For now, let's not forget, our presence in the schools. We are being compelled. Because without us in the schools, they cannot control those children. We are the teachers on duty. We are the senior housemasters who have to ensure that the children do all the right things. That gives them a holistic training. So it's not a luxury for us living in the schools. We are compelled to. And in that situation, we should have even been praised and given better conditions of service in terms of accommodation.
So now you've taken that bold step of proceeding and actually laying down your tools. What will it take you to return to the classrooms?
20% COLA.
Non-negotiable?
Non-negotiable. In fact, I said at the beginning, the government has been so insensitive to us. It started with organized labor, all the teacher unions addressing the press conference as far back as February, 24 February, I remember, 2022. No response. Forum did a similar one, no response. Mayday, I'm sure you were there, under the TUC Secretary General, made a request, official request to the presidency. In fact, certainly the president and the vice president were both there. No response. We followed up with a request, a formal letter. As I speak, I'm unaware of any response.
But some say that particular venue, the signs were clear. The president had given you indication at that very event that you are not going to get what you are looking for, or at least.
The sad part of it, because that's not how to engage. Our expectation was that even if that was the case, you don't give an indication there, because that's where the request.
But that's a president being frank with you, isn't it?
If they want to be frank with us, they should be frank to the end. They cannot choose and pick. We have never been too frank. They have never been too frank with us in terms of how we spend in this country. You know, because I do not want to sound very political. You know how much the president takes. And you know that the president doesn't buy fuel. You know that the president's whole entire life has been taken care of. Now till he dies, he's been taken care of. Yet, they tell us that they have ceded 30%, 20% of their salary. I'm not even too sure what it is. You know what that means? That's my whole annual gross salary. And I'm a deputy director.
So that's
so think about those guys behind me.
Okay. How long do you see this strike going on? I mean, it's a very unfortunate question, but I need to ask you, wouldn't you be considerate of the school children, those in the classrooms, and say, well, we'll just do this for 1 month and then get back to the classroom?
20% Nahan, then work will continue. Without that, nothing else. And we are ready. We are prepared for it. This one, we have taken time. In fact, this government has enjoyed labor. This government has enjoyed labor. They should also just think about that we are also human beings who work tirelessly for this country. Give
us a sense of the membership and some of the schools that are likely to be affected when we talk about this coalition that we are looking at.
This is the entire nation. All schools. Just go for the data of all the schools in this country. Because it's made up of, including non-teaching staff, NAT, NAGRAT, CCT, TEU, the entire staff of the Ghana Education Service and all pre-tertiary institutions within this country.
And this is like the education sector?
Yes.
Before the tertiary level, all of them, everything below it is grinding to a halt. That's a big deal for our education sector.
It's for government to think about that.
You're not mindful?
Well, we are tired.
You've been told on countless occasions that, I'm sorry to say this, your reward is in heaven. You're used to that by now, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's the painful aspect of it. Whilst others are receiving theirs here and still being hopeful that when they get there, they will also get another. We are to be suffering here, so that when we get there, we'll still share the same thing. This time, we'll refuse it. Let's have it here. Give us our daily bread today.
Right. Michael, we need to go, but the president and I'm sure some other officials of government are watching now. What will be that clear message to the authorities and on your demand?
The message is that government, we feel cheated. We feel insulted. Government has been so insensitive to the extent that they do not see the suffering of the Ghanaian teacher and for that matter, the Ghanaian worker. And that they can live in the comfort and the luxury that they live and the rest of us can go to hell. And not even caring to reach out to us. We are sad, but we have to take ourselves to this level so that we are appalled by the inequality of salary levels in this country. And we wish that we can watch one another on the faces and let the right thing be done. And it begins with us telling them the truth, the bitter truth.
How about the parents?
I'm a parent myself. My kids are going to be out of school. But that's what it takes for them to also even be in school in the first place, to eat, to take good medical care. Stop deceiving us. I still have to treat them with money, the meager money.
Which part of the academic calendar are we finding ourselves now, and what would be the likely implication if everything grinds to a halt now?
In fact, it's not of consideration to us at this moment.
Yeah, but you know about that.
Yes.
So which part are we now?
We are not really worried about that. What we are worried about is that everything comes to a standstill, resolve our issue. We have the magic that we have always worked over the years to change everything around. Whether we are in second semester, we are in trimester, we are in first term, we will sort when they, as government, distorted the academic calendar, we put it back in place.
So what you're telling me is, if government pays you even after a month, you would have a way of making up for the contact hours?
We don't expect this to take us 2 weeks. We don't expect this to take us
even if it's 2 weeks. You're expecting that you'll be able to make up for
we
all
will.
The lost contact?
As we have always done. You remember 2006? You remember? NAGRAT went on strike. October 2006. They took our salaries. They didn't pay us in October 2000. Some of us were not paid because we went on a strike. That led to the single spine salary structure. We survived. We put things back in.
So you're determined to do the same this time around?
Well, when we get there, we'll see.
Anyway, and I hope you're not learning from your colleagues at the university level. That's the fear of many out there.
What else can we do but to look up to our seniors? That's an obvious thing to do. If those are our seniors and doing so well, did so well, got what they wanted to do, we can learn from that. Why not emulate the good things? We are determined. And when it comes to the numbers, we have the numbers. We are the ones who produce for them. So we deserve it also.
Anyway, we'll see how all of this will unfold, but I'm grateful. 2 weeks, you're saying, you're hopeful that something will be done about this. But Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Michael Ayoruba is the General Secretary of the NAGRAT, speaking on behalf of the Coalition of Teachers. And as you may have heard about, it's been declared now, obviously, that these groups are going on strike. You're with us here on the Pulse. Please stay with us. We'll return shortly. And you're welcome back to the Pulse. Now, it's been a busy day for Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta as the country prepares to meet the IMF delegation on Wednesday. Mr. Ofori-Atta and the Governor of the Central Bank, Ernest Anderson, have been meeting today to prepare Ghana's notes ahead of the meeting. Now, the pair skipped a meeting called by the President, Akufo-Addo, today with chief executives of the private enterprises to discuss how the Development Bank of Ghana will help make long-term credits available to the private sector. We'll hear from President Akufo-Addo shortly. First, listen to the Chief Executive of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, Yofi Grant, explaining the absence of the Finance Minister.
We have it in front of you. We'll have a few remarks from the Minister for Trade and Industry. The Minister of Finance really wanted to be here, but as you know, we are in trying times. Ghana becomes the 89th country to go to the IMF for support in that fight. So many other countries are there trying to fight the same fight, and it's a global crisis that requires a global. So he's in a conference to the central bank governor, who originally was also going to be here, but events of the week have taken them away. Notwithstanding, we are expecting one of the deputies here. So we can engage.
Well, so as we speak, the Finance Minister is currently under pressure to do a lot more. In fact, there's a lot that's happening even on social media with many Ghanaians reacting on our Twitter handle, where we put up a question there. We could just bring you excerpts of what we put out there. There are calls for the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, to sack Ken Ofori-Atta following the country's resort to the IMF. Do you still have confidence in Ken Ofori-Atta? And that's the question we're putting across on Twitter. A lot of people reacting to it. A significant 57.6% have lost confidence in the Finance Minister. You have just some 28.1% saying they still believe the Finance Minister is in control, but some 14.4% of the participants in this poll believe that they are indifferent about this, and this is just over 700 votes so far. You could also go on there and participate in this. In fact, some Ghanaians on the streets of Accra had this to say about the Finance Minister.
The Finance Minister should step down because he blamed Mahama for a lot of bad or the hardship in this country. Meanwhile, you have given the chance about 6 years now, and look at what is happening. Borrowing, the borrowing that they have borrowed, about 350 something million that they have borrowed, what did they use it for? They should account to Ghanaians. Now, you said Mama was incompetent, that's why you took it to IMF. Now, so what can they describe? Who are they? They being the competent ones. Who are they? What have they done for this country? They have already taken it back to IMF and they want to defend it. What kind of explanation can they give to defend this situation? They have put the country into a very mess situation, and the only thing I'm pleading for the next government is to hold these people to account. That's what we Ghanaians are looking for, to hold them to account, each and every one of them. The PDS scandal, hundreds of them, I can't mention all. So for me, I think the finance minister should sit down, not him alone, but the economic management team, all of them, they should be disbanded.
I think the finance minister is not doing well at all. He have a lot of work to do. The country is not hard for everyone.
He tried to stay back and then offer the best advice that he can to people like the NDC for financial side. You see, he must try to say and then offer good advice. And when he stays back, God will give him a broader view of what he should have done. Then he will rather inform the people.
Well, so these are some of the concerns on the streets of Accra. We'll hear from the Information Minister shortly, but let me introduce at this point former Deputy Finance Minister Fifi Kwete, who's joining the conversation now. He is obviously concerned about Ghana's return to the IMF and has some perspectives to share on this matter. Also joining us as well is Professor Lord Mensah. He'll be joining us later to also comment on this matter. But Fifi, let me welcome you to the program. First of all, I'm sure that when you heard about the announcement, there were a number of issues running through your mind when you officially saw that announcement from the Information Ministry. What's your take largely on the decision by government to turn to the IMF?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to you and all your many viewers across the world. Let me begin by saying that this whole journey back to the IMF on the part of our friends in government ordinarily will not be too much of news, but for the fact that they spent virtually a good part of many years making all kinds of proclamations. And some way, somehow, those proclamations have come back to haunt them today. The truth of the matter is that talk is cheap, like they say. The reality, however, is a whole different ball game. Normally, going to IMF shouldn't really be such. It's not an iniquity going to the IMF, because really there are moments where you clearly are in need of some, shall I call it, big brother to give an assurance to investors and people who want to do business with you, and you need that. I mean, sometimes, especially if you are a developing country. The problem we have is that we have a group that absolutely made it look like the only reason for which anybody else go to IMF is through incompetence and through mismanagement. And so it's been so difficult for them today to accept that their own difficulties have led to this IMF today.
And in fact, Fifi, so, you're not getting that concession anytime soon. In fact, government is still standing by its guns, saying that the reason for which they're heading to the IMF, the context is far different from what the case was for the NDC when you turned to the IMF.
Unfortunately, that is a tragedy. That is a big tragedy that we are dealing with here. If I want to submit that the real crisis of this country today is not so much an economic crisis, it's much more of a credibility crisis, a crisis of character, a situation where we simply do not have in place men and women in leadership who have got the honor and the honesty and the humility to accept the truth. I mean, how could your situation today be different? When all over the sub-region around us, countries facing the same situation that you are facing, and none of them have had to rise to the IMF. How could your situation be different when it is that even before COVID, your deficit financing was already in excess of 7%? It was 7.5% in 2018. And in 2019, it was 7%. How could it be different when in 2019, you're already using about 91% of your tax revenue to take care of your what you call debt servicing? So how could it be? It tells you that this problem has been long in coming. This is not a problem that just started yesterday. So for them to continue persisting, you see, unfortunately, the problem we have is that some way, somehow, this group in power believes that ordinary people are not smart. They are not intelligent. And therefore, all you need to do is to continue lying to them, finding different things to blame. If you are not blaming John,
is that really the case? You're not disputing, for instance, COVID-19, a global pandemic, its effect on the economy is undisputable. You also have the situation about the Russian-Ukraine war. Economists have agreed that indeed there's the impact on a number of developing nations. So where's the lie here, really?
It is going to be the case all the time. Like there are definitely going to be issues that will come from outside to affect you. But the actual strength of an economy is seen when it is that you are able to weather through those storms. How is Ivory Coast weathering the storm? How is Rwanda weathering the storm? How is Nigeria weathering the same storm? What about Togo, an economy that is far, far, far less than ours? What about Benin? So it tells you that you have no excuse. In fact, like Baumia actually said, how is it that external, what you call phenomena, would leave every single country in this sub-region and all over sub-Saharan Africa and attack only Ghana? So you need to have the honor and the humility to accept the truth and stop lying. Because the more you lie, the more you are sinking even more. That's why I'm telling you that the real problem of the country is not so much an economic crisis. It's a crisis of credibility, a crisis of character. We have simply not got a group of people who are humble enough and honest enough to accept the truth. And the more you continue to lie, the more your problem will compound. So that is the first thing that must happen. They must stop giving all these lies. They should stop deceiving the people and accept the fact that they simply have reached a crisis situation and they need help. Of course, they have accepted that. But what it is they are failing to do is to deceive the people, to continue lying to the people that the problem is not our making. How will it not be your problem? If you, as a result of your own fiscal recklessness, you cause a deficit financing, it was a fiscal deficit of almost 16% in the year 2020. How could that not be a problem? Why did Togo and Benin, Rwanda, Burkina Faso don't have the same deficit in the year 2020?
Okay,
are you the only person that faced COVID? Obviously not.
With the way you're talking about the problem, it appears that you're one-sided, isn't it? How about the aspect of the minority itself? You've heard from the information minister last night, for instance, point to the fact that government's internally generated revenue mechanisms were frustrated, quote unquote, by the minority side of the house, i.e. your former colleagues, including the likes of Haruna Idrisu, who was leading that charge, vehemently saying that, for instance, the electronic transactions levy, which government was eyeing to show up revenue, was not that magic one.
Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah. I mean, the talk about minority, that itself is actually a way of telling the people of Ghana that they don't know what they want. And because, I mean, you in the media are not part of the minority. The civil society, they are not part of the minority. The ordinary Ghanaians that voice out loud and clear that they were simply not ready for e-levy, they are not part of the minority. So for you to continue claiming that it is because of the minority, that's why the e-levy has not succeeded, it's simply insulting the people of Ghana. That's why I'm telling you that they need to have the humility and the honor to accept it where the truth is and stop trying to find scapegoat. That's what they are doing. It's basically trying to find scapegoat.
Yeah, but you agree that, for instance, if we had maybe 4 months of uninterrupted e-levy, that would have obviously pushed government to meeting its targets in terms of the revenue.
I'm so sorry. It looks like there's a bit of challenge.
Yes, I was just talking about the frustration.
I don't know whether you can hear me.
We had laxity about 4 months, which we could have made use of if the e-levy were to be passed, for instance. And I'm just dwelling on the e-levy because it's one of government's revenues which it banked its hopes on. The argument is if we had gone throughout that 4-month period without any frustration from the minority, that would have been settled.
As I'm saying, it's not the minority alone that spoke. The minority simply was reflecting the views of the people of Ghana. And the people of Ghana, by a vast majority, say, listen, you have already overtaxed us. You clearly will recall in 2021 the raft of taxes that they brought. After they had deceived the country, claiming that they were going to make everything free, which was simply nothing but political gimmick in order to be able to win power, taking advantage of COVID, they came back and imposed a raft of taxation on the people of Ghana in 2021. So 2022, the people, listen, even the little money we have in our Momo, that we will not let you have. And they said they will. So that is an indictment on them. The fact that they simply were not, they were not far seen enough to know that this was definitely not going to happen because the people of Ghana simply did not want it. That should tell you again that you simply are not capable of handling an economy. So the problem we are having is a self-inflicted problem. They brought it upon themselves and they have nobody to blame. So they attempt to try to blame the minority, blame John Mahama, blame COVID, blame Ukraine. Absolutely is neither here nor there. The problem is 100% they are making.
Fifi would be exploring the solutions shortly. I want you to just hold on for me briefly because we understand that the negotiation team from the IMF will be in the country in the next 48 hours. My colleague Isaac Kofi has been monitoring that for us. He's bringing us up to speed with what to expect and what our positioning is. Isaac, if you can hear me, first of all, tell us about what we're to expect. And also we understand that, for instance, the finance minister failed to show up for one of the events at the Jubilee House today just because of that meeting with the central bank. So what are we to expect when this team actually arrives?
All right, so Wednesday's meeting is what I refer to as the shopping period. So there's a time for Ghana to shop for one of IMF's 9 programs that are available to the country. And for the past, 6 years, we've actually gone in for the extended credit facility, which is our last 6 programs that we had with IMF. And then, just like I said, the IMF is like a supermarket that central banks go there to, shop when they are in crisis or are in need. But listening to the government, considering the fact that they are going heavy on balance of payments, then it means government is really going in for the extended credit facility. But as it stands now, it's so unclear that which program governments will qualify for out of the 9 programs that I mentioned earlier.
Are we getting a sense of our current economic position and what it is that government is on the lookout for from the IMF, from what you've been hearing from sources?
So it's always good to compare what our situation was back then in 2015 to what we have currently 2020. So we start with what we call the exchange rates. So in 2015, by May, the CD had actually lost about 19.9% against the dollar. If you look at what we have currently in 2022, the CD has lost about 15.8% to the dollar. So the situation in 2015 is not really, significantly different from what we are seeing panning out in 2020. There's also inflation. Back then in 2015, when Ghana decided to go to the IMF, inflation was somewhere around 16.9%, and currently we are doing 27.6%, which is significantly different from what our situation was back then in 2015. Then the most important indicator, which we call the gross international reserve, by April 2015, it was somewhere around 4.8 billion Ghana cedis, and that could record as about 3.3 months of import cover.
Right. And
this time around, we are doing somewhere around 8.3 billion cedis, but it's still not different from the amount of import cover. It's still around 3.7, months of import cover.
Right. So I guess that will come up strongly when the negotiations begin. But just as we are learning, of course, the international market is beginning to react favorably as Joy Business is reporting to this austerity plan that was announced by government. Tell us more about it.
Well, at the moment, I think speculation is really working in favor of Ghana. For the fund markets hearing that, Ghana is going in for an IMF program, it means they're anticipating that we are going to get liquidity in the form of foreign currency to actually, help us in our debt servicing in 2022. So it's good news, but it's still early days. We are still waiting for the next credit ratings from S&P, from Moody's, and other people. But just like I was saying, IMF themselves have been in Ghana. They were in Ghana last year, July, to do. We don't know if it's that one was also an Article 4 engagement, but they've assessed our economy, and then they have a pretty good idea of how the economy is looking at the moment. So it will help them in deciding which programs that Ghana will qualify for this time around. But it will all depend on Ghana. We are supposed to own the program. It's supposed to be our program, and all we have to do is to go to the table looking out for support from the IMF.
So many doubts and research on ownership of the IMF programs, but it's another conversation we'll have another time. Isaac Ofeje with our research desk there. Fifi, let me bring you back as we wrap up on our conversation with you, the solution now. But I'm interested, first of all, in finding out from you, did you believe that the IMF program, for instance, that you ran as the NDC, yielded some positive results?
Let me just try to demystify this, okay? The IMF is not making you do it's not rocket science, okay? The IMF is not asking you to do anything that is simply what you got ahead of. The IMF is simply asking you, if you're earning 100 cedis, make sure your expenditure is around the same 100 cedis.
Yeah, but
if you have to do a little,
the IMF
that's
of the
okay.
NDC,
But don't simply go big.
Did the NDC IMF work? I guess that's the question.
No, IMF clearly helps you temporarily by ensuring that investors who have lost confidence in you have some confidence back.
Yeah, but yours worked. Your program worked. You agree?
Before we went, I want to give an example. Before we went to the IMF in 2014-15, we were having a lot of challenges with the currency because investors were having all kinds of worry. But if you notice, in 2016, for example, without even having one cedi from Bank of Ghana, we got zero financing from Bank of Ghana. The first time in our history, we got not one cedi from Bank of Ghana, but we still ended that year with the cedi depreciating by just 9.6%. In 2019, under the MPP, the cedi depreciated by 13%. That was before COVID. So it tells you that even their performance before COVID, in terms of the depreciation of currency, was far worse than 2016.
But did the NDC IMF program work?
But that's exactly what I'm telling you. If it had not worked, you would not have seen the relative stability of the currency.
Precisely what I'm looking for. Precisely what I'm looking for, because I'm looking for the solution. So would the NPP IMF, quote unquote, using that loosely, will it work?
It depends upon how. First and foremost, they need to stop the excuses. Because as soon as you continue giving excuses, it will not work. The excuses must stop because IMF is going to expect you to start telling the truth and stop running away from the truth. Two, IMF is going to expect you to ensure that the measures that are agreed upon are implemented, even those and being humble and honest with the people, it will work.
So it's more about honesty for you. Hello, Fifi. Okay. It appears that we're having some challenges there. Professor Lord Mensah is also with us. We'll talk about organized labor shortly. But Prof, if you're with us, you've heard Fifi Kwete make the points there that it's more about honesty and sticking to whatever it is that the letter of intent is communicating to the IMF. Do you feel that this government will be able to stick by the intent that will raise with the IMF?
A disclosure. I mean, if the government is able to disclose into details the true stand of the economy, obviously whatever they are looking for on the table, they should be able to, get it. But then I'm afraid that maybe government might be resisting because if we should take a cue from when the Ghana was downgraded, the defensive posture of the government, tells you that maybe they may have some part of the economy or understanding the economy in a different perspective that those international organizations may not. But then I hope that going on the table, that should be, something that they can disclose. I mean, full disclosure will be the order of the day.
Right.
Now, I heard you asking whether their program worked or not. I can say for a fact that it worked. Because if you look at the happenings over the years, the first few years that we're recording, positive growth, that's about 7% thereabout, with the interest rate, government borrowing rate coming down to about 14%, 13%. We were still with the IMF. That was about around 2019 thereabout. It was after the finance minister asked for a review of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. When we're exiting the IMF, the president, in his own wisdom, brought in an act which was approved by Parliament. And that act was the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which is supposed to keep us in check as to how we're going to spend and possibly how we're going to generate revenue. But then after the review in 2020, that is when we had the COVID, the finance minister asked permission that the state should give him the chance to go and ask from Parliament to review that Fiscal Responsibility Act that is holding our expenditure checks, to the extent of having what we call the Fiscal, Responsibility Committee, made up of astute professors and people who can keep the government in check. But we threw away all this, and even after we request that we go all out to spend, we never went back to restore it. And we should understand that the government posture over the years has brought us to where we find ourselves now. Because during the COVID, we should have accepted that things are not normal. And so, therefore, whatever expenditure lines we intend to have within that year, we should have reduced it to absorb the shocks that COVID came in with.
So you
remember,
basically
remember
agree.
Within the same year, we're having election. And before COVID and all those, we're complaining about electioneering year, excess spending. So there are three things that put us off board, and it made our expenditure so huge that to recover becomes a problem.
So you agree? So you agree, for instance, with Fifi Kwete when he says that it's a matter of credibility and that government is not being honest enough?
Hello?
You agree with that notion, as we've just heard from Fifi Kwete, that government was not honest enough? You agree?
Yeah, that is true. I mean, if you look at how the IMF and then the e-levy was packaged, it looks like more or less Ghanaians are being deceived. Because if you give Ghanaians options that, look, politically, if we should go to, if we take the e-levy, we may not go to IMF. But then if you don't take the e-levy, we are going to IMF. These are two options. Then it turns out that you are giving us a third choice, which is above all, telling us that we've gone to the e-levy and then we find ourselves in the IMF already. But look, let me tell you that even when you look at the numbers in the 2022 budget, clearly you will see that yes, indeed, the intention to go to IMF was clear. And I can explain to you in details those numbers. If you take, the budget that was read, we had 37 billion budget deficit. With this 37 billion, for the first time, government oriented the financing of the deficit in the domestic market, i.e., we financing more percentage in the domestic market than the foreign market. That is about 27 billion out of the 37 billion. It's only 10 that we are looking at financing from outside.
Right.
Now, with the 27 billion that we are looking at from the local market, we are assuming that the 7 billion that we're targeting for e-levy will come and offset part of the 27 billion.
Right.
It will be left with about 20 billion. Now,
right.
this
so
for
you, the signs were already there.
Where we have liquidity issues and interest rates are going up. So obviously, that will be, from the soft spot, like the IMF. And so I'm not surprised that we are going to IMF anyway.
Anyway, we're grateful, Professor Lord Mensah, but there's a lot more, in fact, happening. The Public Sector Workers Union have been reacting to this. Bernard Ajay is General Secretary of the group, joins us via Zoom now. But Bernard, even as I welcome you, first of all, I'd want you to listen to the Information Minister, Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, speak last night on the probe, where he's been justifying the policy measures of the Finance Minister. He says, for instance, that the President has not lost trust in him.
Democracy. We are in a democracy. You're going to get calls from various places about various things. What you do is you ask yourself, what are the key value drivers? This is a finance minister who from 2017 to 2019 leading the charge. We saw how the Ghanaian economy with its own challenges still delivered some numbers. This is a finance minister who, when we were hit by 2020, we saw how he was able to lead for us to rally to get the necessary buffers in place to respond. We are now in 2020. He was pretty optimistic that we can still do it domestically. The domestic program has been challenged. I've explained to you the various challenges the domestic program has suffered. And contrary to his initial position, the boss takes a decision that this is what I want my administration to do. And has put together a task force to start working on it for it to happen. You may have those who say, yes, he should fire the finance minister. But go back to, for example, President Mills and Dr. Kwabena Dufo. Go back to President Mahama, who interestingly made this call a few days ago, and his finance minister at the time, my very good friend, Mrs. Sektekbe. The history will tell you that presidents have a lot of confidence in their finance ministers until you can prove otherwise. In our case, even the more, if you look at the work that our finance minister has led us to do in the first part before these pandemics hit us, it will not support that argument that because he was initially of the view that we can do this domestically, he should be fired. No, I don't think he'll support
So he still has the support of the president and the party at large?
That is mine.
Right, so the finance minister has the support of the president, but what do the Public Services Workers Union think about this? Joining me now is Bernard Ajay, secretary for the group. They believe, first of all, that the IMF program will have dire consequences for the public sector. Bernard, do you want to be drawn into the conversation surrounding the performance of the finance minister, for instance?
You bet I don't want to be drawn into that conversation.
Yeah,
because,
just to play safe, I guess.
Obviously, the president has the mandate of Ghanaians to manage the economy and the country. And if he finds the finance minister as the best person to lead that economic agenda, that is his choice. But of course, we are Ghanaians, we are workers, and therefore we can only speak to the effects that their actions are having on us. And if the president believes that that is not what he wants for Ghanaians, and therefore the finance minister is either doing his bidding or what he wants or otherwise, I think that's an entirely decision for him to make.
Right,
yeah.
that's a diplomatic answer there. Now to the crux of the issues. Let's talk about your position on the IMF program. You believe that there are consequences for the public sector. What particularly is your fear about the program?
Exactly so. I mean, this will not be the first time that Ghana is going to the IMF throughout our history. We've all seen what the impact of an IMF intervention in our economy have had on us. We would have wished, and it's the position of Labour, we've stuck to that. We've been consistent that IMF would never be the solution to our economic problems and woes until we learn as a country and as a people to sit up and do things properly and ensure that the economy or the country is run for the benefit of the citizens. And especially in this case, I will speak for the workers and public service workers for that matter, until we do things that will ensure that the ordinary citizens, the ordinary workers benefit from it, we don't find the IMF as a solution to our woes. What happens? They come, they take the whip, they crack the whip and make sure they whip you into line so that you are in a situation where you can pay your debts to these countries who virtually also control the IMF. And at the end of the day, they leave the economy for you. And what happens? It goes back. So we in Labour, and for that matter, the Public Service Workers Union, are not for an IMF program. It only brings austerity measures that compounds the situation of workers. Whatever is happening since COVID time up to now, we don't see the real support that our economy or the government has really given to workers. Things getting worse by the day. Our salary levels are nothing to write home about. 2021, 2022, we all know the sacrifice workers made by the kind of increases we got, 4%, 7%, which were virtually wiped out in the next 2 months. And workers are really suffering.
All right,
Food prices are very high. Transportation costs are very high. Everything is high. Workers are struggling. We don't see any help. And going for an IMF program is only going to compound the situation for workers. And we think that the government is not really thinking about us as workers and the citizenry.
Is that really the case? Is that really the case? Speak to this for me. You've been accused, and I mean by extension workers in the public sector, of contributing to the wastage in government. You've heard that on countless occasions. What's your reaction?
Well, we've heard that ever since I started working with labor. I have heard that several times. But why don't we let people take responsibility? How has public sector workers contributed to what is happening? Now, if I go to work as a public service or sector worker, am I my own supervisor? Am I my own manager? And if I'm not working, what processes have I been taken through? Who has come out to say I didn't come to work and I didn't do what I was given to do? When would we learn to take responsibilities for things that we are responsible for? Workers always go to work. They make themselves available to work for this country to grow. If the one who is to supervise or who is to make available funds to do things, or should I use my salary to buy goods and services?
So you believe it's more about leadership? So you believe it's more about leadership?
I mean, what are we talking about? If we say workers are not performing, I mean, who is in charge? Who is responsible? And we come on air, we say this thing, and we are happy about it. I come to work, I need a car to move.
Hello, Bernard. Appears. Okay, Bernard, you'd want to just quickly reposition yourself and make the point you're making once more. But one final question to you. The point about the alternative. What's the alternative of the public sector workers union on all of this? Particularly when we're being warned now by government that if we do not turn to the IMF, there'll be a serious impact on the economy. Bernard, if you can hear me, I'm just asking about the alternative. It appears that we'll have to get back to that conversation, but thank you so much for joining us. That's the General Secretary of the Public Sector's Workers Union, Bernard J., giving us their position there. There's a lot more happening in terms of the economy. The minority in Parliament is also vowing to block a $1 billion syndicated loan before Parliament. The loan agreement being sponsored by the Finance Ministry is to support the implementation of the 2022 budget. Government is touting the facility as a stopgap measure to fix revenue shortfalls even before government signs onto a new deal with the IMF. But according to the minority, the agreement, if approved, will worsen the country's debt to GDP ratio. Listen to Ranking Member on the Finance Committee, Dr. Kisel Atul-Forson.
I've said that the problems we are in is the fact that we have an unsustainable debt. Any attempt for us to support the government to take another decision to add on additional commercial debt without showing clear signs of building buffers to repay, it means we are participating in the destruction of the economy. His Excellency John Mahama was right. And I commend him for such a bold decision. And for me, it's a three-line whip on us to make sure we do not participate in the destruction of the Ghanaian economy.
John Mahama is, as far as I'm concerned, the leader of the NDC going into the next election. When our leader speaks, as his lieutenants, we fall in line. He's giving the marching orders. We'll execute on the floor of the House. That those agreements will not see our fight it every step of the way using every legitimate means in our power.
So you may have heard about it, but it's also a reality now. Fuel prices have shot up once more at the pumps, raising concerns about the implication for the cost of living. Now, diesel, for instance, as we understand, is being sold at 14 cedis per litre. The latest rise is being attributed to the restoration of the controversial Unified Petroleum Price Fund, which is contributing to the marginal rise that we're experiencing. So what are the projections going forward for fuel prices and the implication on the economy? Joining us now, Fritz Moses, research analyst with the Institute for Energy Security. Fritz, so take us away. Give us a projection from your desk. What do you see happening in the coming days?
All right, Blessed. Thanks for having me. Unfortunately, we are expecting that prices at the various forms would reduce, particularly for petrol. We are expecting to see a reduction to about 10 cedis 55 pesos per litre for the various OMCs. But unfortunately, like you rightly mentioned, with the reintroduction of the UPPF margin on the price board, we are seeing rather an increment in the price. What we are picking up from the international markets is that prices continue to fall. Of course, that is good news to the consumer. We expect that it would still continue. Of course, ending last week, the last pricing window, we saw oil trading around $121 per barrel. Unfortunately, now prices have dropped to around $117, trading around $115 per barrel. And so we expect to see a continual fall in prices on the international markets. Unfortunately, however, we don't see our cedi appreciating against the US dollar. We expect that the various the speculations in the market with the government of Ghana engaging the IMF would show up some investor interest in the country's and finances and economy. And of course, that would mean that we may see an uptick in the rise, an uptick in the strength of the cedi against the US dollar. If those two activities.
Yeah, and well, Fritz, we're having some challenges hearing you. If you could kindly unmute, but I guess the basic concerns has to do with the pumps and whether or not all of these effects and interventions you're talking about will yield some reduction. That's what we're on the lookout for. Fritz, if you can hear me, kindly unmute so we can get the point you're making. But I'm concerned about the pumps as well and what the implications will be.
Okay, so basically what I was trying to make was that, of course, with our expectation, and we see the markets prices continue to fall in the international markets, we hope that it will continue for the next few couple of weeks that we have ahead of us. If that should happen, then we believe that barring any further reintroduction of the various margins that were removed on April 1st this year, we would see prices rather fall at the various forms.
The argument has been made that the OMCs haven't recouped all the losses they've made, particularly during the COVID-19 period. One of the major reasons for which we're not seeing that sharp or steep decline. What do you have to say about such arguments as well?
Well, we also heard of such positions by some BDCs and OMCs. Of course, we also heard some OMCs complain about the fact that they still had stock from the previous window that were priced higher, and so prices were expected to maintain or even go higher for diesel especially. What we believe is that, of course, with new products coming in with their prices and with prices falling on international markets, as I've already indicated, we are seeing petrol prices fall about 2%, diesel prices is falling around 9%, LPG is falling around 6% on international markets. We expect that this will influence the current price that we would see at the various forms from this week, going on to next week. Because next week, next 2 weeks, next week, we expect to see more fall in price on international markets, and that should definitely reflect at the various forms.
And the concern about the varieties, or I mean the variations, I should say, in diesel and petrol. What accounts for that? How come you find the crude form of that product costing much more than petrol itself, which is more refined?
Well, unfortunately, what's happened is Ghana, we source our diesel particularly from the European markets. Now, if you go to Europe, majority of their about 40% of their diesel needs is produced by Russia. And now with the restrictions that have had to be put in place following the Russia-Ukraine war, what has happened is it costs it's causing supply glut in Europe, and so they are seeing some reduction in supply of the products there, meaning that they are seeing some shortage there. And so, of course, with supply halted and demand still rising, because we've entered the summer season, so we see how demand will continue to increase from there. That would mean that prices will start to increase, and prices have already been increasing. And so that's what has been accounting for the consistent rise in prices for diesel. Unfortunately, efforts by Saudi Arabia and the other Arab League nations to produce that supply glut that Russia is unfortunately bringing on the regional market hasn't been able to meet up with that existing impact from the supply inefficiency. And so we would continue to see that inability of Russia to supply on the European market affect prices, of course, causing prices rise up. Unfortunately, however, from gasoline, that's petrol, we see US pumping in much of its reserves on the European market, and so we see how that is able to stabilize the market the more.
Anyway, from COVID-19 to Russian-Ukraine war. Anyway, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you, Fritz, for helping us out with the analysis. But there's a group, the Coalition for Democratic Accountability and Inclusive Governance, which is expressing displeasure about the heightened levels of economic hardship based on the rising cost of fuel and other commodities as well in the country. The group wants immediate action from our authorities. Joining us now via Zoom is Kofi Bentel, Vice President, Imani Africa. Thank you, sir, for your time. So where do we start from? From the leadership or from the people? Kofi Bentel, if you could... Yes, if you could kindly unmute so we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, do you hear me now?
Yes, that's better. Right.
Right. So, good afternoon. Definitely, leadership is everything. It starts from leadership. Our address is first to leaders. And our point is that whatever our leaders are doing, the effect on the people clearly is not what we expect it to be. So we are hoping that there will be some sort of a shift in whatever leadership paradigm they are implementing, because things are really bad right now, and we hope to see some changes.
But Kofi, you've heard the argument, and I'm sorry to be repeating that again, issues about the externalities and how we're vulnerable to it. Is that justifiable enough?
No, it's not. It's not at all. Look, again, the best example to give is that we are in a sub-region where we have generally the same kind of conditions or similar conditions across, and you don't see the same kind of situation elsewhere. Before these externalities, okay, we had problems and we were drumming on those problems. And one of the things that we said before COVID and before Ukraine war was that managing an economy this tight to the rope, as if we can never hit the crisis, is not smart. Way back then, even when we were discussing free SHS at Imani, we said, look, you cannot put all your resources on one program. It's just not smart. So our problem started pre-COVID. Our loan book, the borrowing, the profligacy, the waste, the corruption, the V8 culture started before COVID. Then COVID hit us and made things worse. And still we did not see change. Then after COVID, we had this Ukraine war, which made things even worse. Then they decided they were going to bring e-levy. Whenever we have a problem, they come back to the same suffering citizens and force us to give up even more of what we don't have. And they were told that, look, what you need to do is cut the waste, cut the profligacy, cut the unnecessary expenditure. All right. We are not saying people should not, live comfortably, but you don't have a right to live like an Arabian king when the rest of the people cannot feed. Which is why we will always have problems with things like the president flying in expensive jets when there are options to that. And it's not because somebody doesn't like somebody or whatever it is. We are saying that if you are leaders, connect to our common reality. Your job is not to live large at our expense. Your job is to do what you can to alleviate our situation. So our problems predate COVID, and they predate this Ukraine war, and we are saying our leaders need to shift and do a better job at this leadership thing.
Kofi, are there any exact demands you're putting before government as a coalition?
Yes, we put out a statement, and I think you should read through the statement. So there were some specific demands that we put, and we are expecting government to respond to some of them. And some of them have to do with asset declaration. We need government to speak to those things. Some of them have to do with withdrawing the Ijapa deal, which they are proceeding full speed ahead on, because if they do not, we will react. And a number of things, the corruption, we have a statement out there, which I believe, we have sent to you as well. And what we are looking for is this. You can't solve all the problems tomorrow, but we need to see you move. We need to see you take some action. We need to see you move in the right direction so that we have some hope that you are serious about solving the problem. There is a general feeling that the leadership or part of it has given up, that they don't care what happens and we are just on autopilot. There is a general feeling that nothing is going to change. People are calling for accountability. People are calling for people to resign. We don't hear anything. It's not so much because somebody wants somebody's downfall, but the point is you are doing a job for us and you are doing a particularly bad job. So it's okay if we say that, look, we need to see some changes in the personnel. But it doesn't look like anybody cares about all those calls and they're going to just go ahead and do what they want to do anyway. I think that attitude is wrong. And the coalition is saying that, look, we take a very serious view to the fact that if you take on leadership, you must do the work. If you cannot do the work, just move off and let somebody else do the work.
Yeah,
instead of holding on to the power and then just not doing anything about it.
Yeah, but let's take you up on the concern about, for instance, a reshuffle. What will definitely change if we know, for instance, that the president is still president? The constitutional requirement is that the ministers are to support the president in delivering his vision. So if it's not working, it's not working, regardless of who may be in that portfolio.
If it is not working, it is not working. If we take your position right now, what it means is that what we have now is the best Ghana can give. This is the country that produced Kofi Annan. This is the country that produced Kwame Nkrumah. This is the country that has produced many illustrious sons. You can't tell me that the performance we are seeing now is absolutely the best situation. The president must do better. He cannot leave us in this situation and pretend he can't do anything about it. Truth is, if the president takes the position that he cannot do anything about it, that is tantamount to declaring that he has to resign himself. So we expect leaders to do something to make things better. And if they are bereft of ideas, if this is their wit's end, if they don't have anything more they can bring to the table, then the honorable thing for them to do is for the whole government to resign. And there's room for that. So what we are saying is that, look, we have a country which God has blessed. The average Ghanaian will not take up certain things and then create, chaos. But the kind of pressure that Ghanaians are being put under, sometimes you are afraid that people will break and you don't know what will happen. So the leaders must lead. If they can't, they should just move off and let other people come and do the work. We have enough people to do the work.
Kofi, the argument has been made that the civil options have been exhausted. In fact, the latest being, we've seen about 2 days of straight protest by some groups. You have Arise Ghana, some of them, and we've seen other groups as well pour out onto the streets. The feeling is some of these civil options have been exhausted. Do you agree with such sentiments?
No, I don't agree with those sentiments. The civil options are never exhausted. You can get to the point where the whole country is going to grind to a gridlock because we are going to call everybody onto the streets and declare a month-long strike. All of us are going to suffer for it. But the point is, that's a civil option. The courts are still open, and regardless of what people think about the courts, they are still an option for us, and I still have confidence in the courts. So there are things that we'll be able to take to court, and if we have to, we will do so. And we are calling as citizens on our leaders to act, to do what they've promised to do what we pay them to do what they are taking upon themselves to do, for which they take very good pay and very good conditions. So they should just do it. Now, if they do not do it, they should leave and let other people do it. If they won't do it and they will not leave, we will confront them. We'll confront them in the courts. We'll confront them on the streets. We'll confront them on radio and on TV. We'll confront them as a coalition so that they can come up against one person in particular. And wherever we meet them, we will confront them because this is our country. We put them there to make our lives better. All we see is they go there and make their lives better. So I don't agree that the civil options have been exhausted. I think we have a lot more options, and it's a toolbox of options. We won't take just one, we will use all of them. If we have to go to court, we will go to court. If we have to confront them on radio and TV, we will confront them. Write statements, we'll write statements. And if ultimately we have to call people onto the streets, we will do so.
I'm grateful for your time, Kofi Bentil, Vice President, Imani Africa. The Catholic Bishops' Conference has been speaking on the matters concerning the National Cathedral and also issues relating to our national development. Obviously, there's the time for us to listen to Most Reverend Gabriel Kumoji, who's been speaking on the sidelines of that conference.
At this stage, National Cathedral has started already. And so since it has started already, I am not on a stage whether we need it or not. It has started. What I will say is, how are we going to do it, to build it, and how are we going to finish it, especially in this economic crisis? What can we do? We have to take a decision. But like those days, they say we don't need it, we don't need it. That time has passed now. What we have is we have it now. So how can we build it? Can we leave it there like that, the foundation on, and the building, the walls are halfway, and then we remove all the things and leave it, expose it to the world that this is the house which Ghana decided, or some people decided to build, and they couldn't finish. And the Bible says that when they pass and see that, they will laugh at us.
And now the General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, has called on all social democratic parties in the country to see themselves as one and come together to rescue the country from the governing New Patriotic Party. He urged them to put the petty squabbles over slogans, names and personalities and the back burner and rather go for principles and policies which are more sustainable. Asiedu Nketia made the call at the swearing-in of 1,000 defectors of the Progressive People's Party to the National Democratic Congress in Wa. JoyNews Imf West regional correspondent Rafiq Salam now reports.
The IMF
addressing
Ghana
1,000 supporters of the
tweet
Progressive People's Party
PPP
the
funds
in the
support
Upper West
for an
region
economic program.
who have defected to the National Democratic Congress, NDC, General Secretary of the NDC, Asiedu Nketia.
Apologies for that. Now, Accra will soon become the cleanest city in Accra. That's according to the Greater Accra Regional Minister, Henry Korte, as he deploys more than 800 personnel as city response team by the Operation Clean Your Frontage Secretariat. The personnel will help in the implementation of the sanitation campaign, Operation Clean Your Frontage. Michael Ashale was there and now reports.
Let's appreciate.
The personnel, numbering 998, marched through the principal streets of Accra. The Greater Accra Minister leads them on an awareness campaign. The task force is expected to manage traffic situation in the Central Business District and ensure that individuals stop selling on the shoulders of the street.
Not far from here, more than 500 men are being deployed from the Secretariat into the Central Business District or some other areas. The Secretariat calls them the hotspot. What is going to be the work of these newly launched city guards? They are going to be enforcing the tenets of Operation Clean Your Frontage. One of them is that every entity, household, business is expected to clean the frontage of their homes all the way to the middle of the roads that is in front of it. So these men and women you see behind me, more than 500 of them will be responsible for that work. The minister, Henry Korte of the region, Greater Accra region, has been stern, has been straightforward that these people are not the same as what we term as abaye, those that are in the business of harassing and looting the goods of people who are breaking the law all the way. But these people are supposed to enforce the law.
Also, they will be focused in some principal areas that the Secretariat described as hotspots.
All we need for people to know is not to sell on the streets. They should be off the streets. No unauthorized vehicles should be parked by the roadside in the CBD. You have to ensure that. And again, don't fight the people. Our concentration is going to be within the CBD. That is La Paz, Kanishi, Mala, Agbogboshi area, Farisco, Circle, Kwame Nkrumah Avenue, around CMB, Rollins Park, PWD, Kimbu area, behind Novotel, Okanshi, and others.
But not without a stern warning not to confiscate the wares of individuals who are found wanting.
I must be quick to caution you. You are not to go there and brutalize people. You are not to go there and beat people. You are not to go there and begin to extort monies. I've told you already, if the coordinator sees anybody, even if you are my son, and listen to me carefully, collecting money, taking somebody's tomatoes, taking somebody's onions, and in fact, those of you who want to engage the women by the roadside so that you can start chopping their food, just remember that we will not only sack you, but we will hand you over to the police to prosecute you.
The services of some retired military men were sought to act as supervisors to the various teams. Against the fears of the involvement of the military men, Colonel Kofi Emisa Mensah says there's no need to worry.
If you look at the morale and enthusiasm of these young ladies and gentlemen who have been trained, specifically trained to do this job, the morale is so high. The minister himself has actually instilling some spirit into them this morning, and we are going straight away to Obrasport, and that is where the old man will launch the beginning of the program.
I mean, there are fears that military men, usually involved in operations, humanitarian operations, it becomes chaotic sometimes. What's the assurance that it's not going to become like something we've seen in the past?
No. Like I said the first day, you know, the military guys are well disciplined. These are selected military retired warrant officers, seasoned ones who have served the system for 30 years and they are going home. So the minister, in his wisdom, requested the Ghana forces to assist, and this gentleman has been released for him to do the work. They are going to supervise the ladies and gentlemen, or in other words, the working force known as the city response team. They are going to supervise them to do work. There will be no intimidation, there will be no harassment. They are going to work as gentlemen. It is not abaye. The work they are going to do is that it's a peaceful cooperation. We want the cooperation of everybody living in Accra, every single soul living in Accra and in Greater Accra region.
People fear this is going to be a 9-day wonder, the sustainability of it. We know that other programs that government have brought out, NAPCO, even the national service people that is mandatory, they are suffering. I mean, is there any plan for sustainability?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, this program is going to be sustained until Accra has reached the level that the minister wants it to be.
Okay. Now, for those who are looking to do the wrong thing, going to continuously do the wrong thing, what are you going to be telling them?
What we are going to do is that there will be warnings, and I'm very sure the assemblies have also prepared. The recalcitrant ones will be prosecuted.
In the next 5 years, the minister hopes the campaign will bring Accra closer to being the cleanest city on the continent. For Joy News, Michael Ashali.
Well, it's exactly a year since the onion traders were forced out of Agbogboshi market. Some of them moved to Dominase in the central region against their earlier fears of slowed business. The traders say business has improved. The Greater Accra Regional Minister has been marking this day with the traders. Michael Ashali also reports.
A year ago, Regional Minister Henry Korte, as part of plans to decongest the Agbogboshi market, relocated onion traders to Dominase and Ajin Kotoku. But the traders fought back. They feared their trade and livelihoods would die out at the new site. But the minister stood his grounds. A year on, the traders are relieved their business are still vibrant. They met the minister with cheers. Although happy, the market is relatively young and lacking many amenities. The traders appeal to the Greater Accra and Central Regional Ministers to come to their aid. Sidi Muhammad is with the Onion Traders Association at the Dominase Onion Market.
Light, aninsu, ne toilet, ne ayi speed ramp no, anti security dia menkambwa commander oya dia. She's a yaba hanging 24 hours. Central
Regional Minister Justina Marigold Asan promised to come to their aid.
There a champion dominance market no order ya one nti menyimi ya penyin de ya zinkomo ya babua mama sitem adwomo ya babua mamu gwezi amuzi akonanyim mo ba de mo be ya adwuma na obi from wake post there madam we mu de wo ba ya market wo ha me per space kakra nti ma space nti nkrofo dodo na wo ba ha wo ba ya adwuma nkrofo bebre na sika bo won kotokum dodo na wotu mo hwe wo ma wo school
In the absence of street lights, the traders say they are unable to work at night.
Minister sacked us from the various places, that's Abobloshi, which first we are not be happy. We didn't happy for that. But today, Alhamdulillah, we realize that what the minister did, he did very well. He did good for us, and we pray. And I'm standing here, Miss City. If I'm the minister today, I'm going to do the same thing the minister did. So I'm very happy. We are free here. Problem. Everywhere is a problem. We don't have much problem. If I can be honest to you, the big problem here we had is the speed road. The speed is too much.
Yeah, how can see any car quino? Nananum paying for any on abonum. I pay actually na watch na car bobby or so. So be chuck when wabeto a jene, wabeto a bibi kakra, bayra kakra no the chuck anymore. Ya be one say, car no abon. 80 when the 2 paying for them say a threat. So bet me have rams am my or quino so. Send ya be ya, a bet me saving in lives. Now my assume
Henry Korte promised to assist them with street lights.
Adie way a bibia asumbo ewo omamu and to move some ye munkutam ye and I'm free and some yan check ya besa ko na enen ya be die munkasa ni nyina no regional minister minua ba obehwe ne ama nketenkete na mum ye betumi ahya mu bokakra se onyame adomu a de yenso ye de beboa ye nua ba wo ha afri greater Accra ni se ye beba betu borehole amamo ha. Yes. Borehole de enya start bape a no water bill. Yes. Ko ba ka ba. Na ye tu borehole no mamo a monsumo mamodini na monto water tanks na inso no mremu na mamodi na monhwesu ye kama afe no electricity street lights me mayor akasa me MC wa ha Greater Accra nyame adomu a by the next 3 weeks you know ye be bring street lights you know bako ye be bring street lights bako 30. Yes. Ye be bring 30 street lights na ya hwe many regional minister be kasa ye was street post bi kakra on crime so ye nyaka de be ba ye be ma mo street post no so bako 20. Nti ye de ba na mo de post ne sisi hu nyina de twa ho na mo de light no ahihye so ade sa na kanea so ama ho na Rome was not built in a day. Little drops of water, they say, makes a mighty ocean. Enti ye de kakra akuko obenumunsu.
Sometime in July, the minister will be meeting the traders at the Ajin Kutuku market. For Joy News, Michael Ashali.
And that's all we have for you here on The Pulse. I am Blessed Sogah. Don't forget to log on to myjoyonline.com. We have updates on all of our stories there for you. Next is Let's Talk Sugars.